So back in July, I found myself in Gadsden, Alabama with my good friend Jason Russell and his family. We leaned into the legendary southern summer heat and humidity and went down, did some carving and some fishing together. So the goal for the week was we all wanted to carve a goldeneye decoy and paint it and complete it while also catching as many fish as we could. So come join us in the painting room as we paint the goldeneyes that we carved during the week and talking about decoys, talking about competition, tradition, and what all this stuff means to him. So my name's Luke Costello, and this is Carving Tradition.
So when did you start carving? How did this all begin for you?
So I'm going to back up to when I started duck hunting.
Okay.
Can I do that?
What came first? Duck hunting or duck carving?
Definitely duck hunting.
Okay.
So in high school, didn't really grow up hunting. Went deer hunting a time or two, whatever, here and there. But in high school, a good friend of mine asked me to go duck hunting with him. And I was like, sure. So we went, liked it. As we got to college, we started becoming more successful. And then I started reading just to kind of educate myself. I saw the Ducks Unlimited magazines, started reading those. And so I guess that was probably early 90s. And then I decided that I would carve. Well, actually, I wanted to buy wooden decoys because I was reading those articles in the old Ducks Unlimited magazines about how the old timers, made their decoys to hunt over. And I wanted a wooden decoy. Couldn't afford to buy one as a poor college student living off nothing, frozen, whatever was on sale in the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So went and bought myself a block of wood and a pocket knife. Didn't understand that was a bad idea. Literally tried to carve the block of wood with the knife.
Any idea what kind of wood it was?
Probably yellow pine from the treated pine from the hardware store.
Okay.
So
times were tough.
But I didn't know what I was doing. So I realized I had an uncle. Well, I knew I had an uncle, but I had an uncle that he was pretty good with tools, and he had a bandsaw. So I talked to him about it, and he showed me how to use the bandsaw. So I literally took a plastic blow-up duck decoy and drew a pattern myself on the piece of wood, and then we rough carved it out. So in 1996, I made my first duck, which was a mallard.
Mm-hmm.
I made a few. I made canvas bags, made a few mallards. I have a friend of mine here in town. He came a hold of some black cork somehow. Back then, that was before everybody had computers and cell phones and access to stuff. But somehow he shows up with a couple of sheets of black cork. So we cut out some canvas backs and bluebills. And during that time, we continued. In college, my wife now, when we were dating, she would go down to the Birmingham Public Library and check out Grayson Chester books for me. I was like, well, I knew then she was a keeper.
Were they pattern books?
Nope, they were it was the old book he wrote about traditional decoys.
Okay.
I forget the name of it. I've got it in there somewhere. But what really made me continue to carve was I'd carved two big, ugly bufflehead drakes.
Mm-hmm.
Sat them out about 3 foot apart from each other. And I'll never forget that one single drake buffy that sat in right between them. And I ended up killing a limit that day. And I knew from that moment that I would continue to carve.
That was the day.
Yeah, I began carving out of interest and out of not having the money. But then that moment hooked me. It gave me a love for it.
Yeah.
So
it started off as like a utility and then turned into a passion from there.
Yep, absolutely. So then from that, eventually when we got married, my wife brought a computer to the marriage, which was a big deal.
Very fancy.
Brought the internet, which allowed me to hunt down a carver up in Pennsylvania, Bill Kell. I called him up on the phone and we spent hours, talking on the phone weekly, just about how to do this and tools and all those kind of things. So it kind of got me better. And I entered Havre de Grace, their decoy show. He entered it for me without telling me. I did pretty well. And then eventually we went up there to a show and met a lot of the carvers, you know. And then I realized that there were people that were doing this across the country. And they were nice and willing to help. Then, you know, I met your dad in Louisiana eventually. He was a huge help.
Mm-hmm.
Great mentor for me. And then other people, you know, like Bob Nelson, our friend that we share,
Mm-hmm.
you know, huge mentor.
From New London, Ohio.
Yeah. And then you got Shoot, you know, from Missouri. So it's always interesting to me how it started with reading a magazine and a friend that took me duck hunting. And just those relationships that build, you know, across the country. That's the best part about this whole thing.
Yeah.
And here we are, you know, because you were coming down here when you were, how old were you?
So I was 12, 13, I think. So I started coming down here for the youth duck season, which is in February in Alabama. And my birthday was February 10th. So that's when Dad started doing that as the birthday present for me and bringing it down here to hunt with you on my birthday weekend, shooting like full plumed out wood ducks in February.
Yeah,
Because
it was season
February.
Yeah, the youth hunt was in February then.
It was February 10th.
Gosh,
My birthday.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore.
They don't?
No. You get 1 week after now.
Oh, okay.
But I remember the gadwall, one of the prettiest gadwall I've ever seen was one you killed.
Yes.
On one of those youth hunts on the Tennessee River. Well, you know, and from that, just thinking about like how our, you know, me being able to come up there, sit in y'all shop, you know, do the Ohio show.
Yeah.
Your dad teaching me to set eyes with tough carve.
Dude, tough carve's so good.
I love it. But that night was tough because I remember your dad put an eye in and he had me put an eye in. He took my eye out and said, start over. I put my eye in. He'd go, that's good. He'd cut it out and say, start over.
Sounds like him.
After about 10 of those, I was like, okay, I will definitely try this at home. I'm ready to quit. Enough.
We'll definitely get to talking about the shows, but like our friendship, I feel like is a good example of just the community of people and the friends and the opportunities that we've gotten through doing the carving competitions.
Yeah.
And just the incredible people that we've met along the way.
Yeah.
You know, like us, this turned into an almost 20-year friendship.
Yep.
Doing stuff like
Yep.
this.
Yep. I mean, that's like we consider your family, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I think with the carving community, you know, I mean, if I had not have started carving, just the community, I've been able to hunt really a lot of places in the country, and 95% of that's been because of hunting with other carvers or customers. You know what I'm saying? People that have bought the birds. So just those relationships have built like tremendously over the years. So that's a cool thing.
When did competition start to be important for you, to you?
I didn't really know it existed, right? Until Bill Kell had entered my birds. I went and I liked it. And at first it was about camaraderie, you know. For me, at some point in there, it became a distraction because I guess I thought I was a better carver than what I was and thought I could compete at a higher level than what I should have been. And it became a drive to go because of the people. And then, of course, you know how competition gets. And then you start losing some of your love for it. You know,
it humbles you very quickly.
It humbles you quickly. Realizes you got to be better. And I kind of live in a decoy island down here where this is not a traditional thing for us. Whereas I feel like Northeast, where you guys are, I mean, you're Ohio, Michigan, there's a lot.
There's a lot of guys up there.
Yeah. And the West Coast, you know. And or you go down to Louisiana, but you were kind of like just Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia. Not a whole lot of us around. So, you know, and being so far away, it's hard to go to competitions. But now when I go, it's just like this right here. It's like I just want to go see people. I want to be around people. It's not about, of course, you want to win, but you really just, I think, taking that pressure off yourself and relaxing while you're there allows you to talk to more people and opens more doors so that you can build those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, my part of carving is it's all about the relationship, especially now as I get older. I'm liking this.
Did you find that competition drove you to be better?
Definitely. I told you a story about your dad. The first time I went to Louisiana, how I thought I was doing good.
Now, is this the Cajun Heritage?
Yep, Cajun Heritage Festival
Yep.
in Louisiana. It used to be in Westwego. Now it's on the North Shore. It's in October now, I think. And so, back before Katrina, I went down there once because I'd heard there was a show close to me. And so with that, I went. And the only way I could get a ribbon was if there was, I'd get third if there were 3 birds. I'd get second if there were 2 birds. I'd only get first in a species if there was only 1 bird.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody served me humble pie, I think. Got my tail whipped. But I remember talking to your dad, I met your dad at that time and asked him what to do. And he gave me some pointers about things I need to clean up, things that I just didn't see. I'm not liking that. But I went home and did it and went back the next year and won the show.
Yeah.
So
and Dad was second.
Dad was second. Yeah.
Ooh.
Which is and he told me at that time, I'll never tell you anything else. Thankfully being funny and facetious. You realize the importance there of, what people with experience and knowledge can do, for you and for the carving community as a whole.
Yeah.
I met a lot of carvers down there. That was back when I feel like that show was in its heyday, when you had guys from all over the country coming to it, and you had, you would sit there and go to the headwood on contest, and it'd be like Jimmy Vizier, Tan Brunet, and all those guys. And at the time, I didn't know who those guys were because I was new. I didn't know anybody. But I look back at it now and go, man, what an experience that I was able to have without even realizing that I had it, which I think in life, a lot of things like that happen is that you learn to appreciate it later.
Yeah. Well, you never know you're living through it.
Yeah.
Until it's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm. So, and I still go to that show. Still, I kind of consider it my home show, even though it's 6 hours away.
Sure.
Which is tough to be able to, when you're this far away from everything, to be able to stay connected. So,
yeah, the shows have always been super important for me, and just kind of always just a big part of it, and what really pushed me to get better and kind of develop my style and things like that. And it's just been really sad seeing kind of the competition circuit as a whole just slowly dwindling away, kind of slowly going away.
Here's a memory for you. Okay, your family came down to go to the beach. We were going to go with y'all to the Gulf. Jonathan, my youngest, was crying nonstop and like sick or something, and we just couldn't go. We bailed out. And you had brought down a decoy to show me. And I asked if you were going to send it to the Worlds. And you said, well, y'all said we're going to the beach. There's no way to do that. And I said, I'll send it for you. And you won.
Was that the wood duck?
It was the wood duck.
Yeah.
Was that your first or second?
First or second what?
Win at the Worlds in the junior division. I think you won the bluebill and won the wood duck.
That would have been my third.
Okay.
That would have been my third because my bufflehead and blue. I think so. Second or third.
Yeah, something like that.
Second or third.
But I remember you weren't going to send it, and I was like, I'll do it. I'll send it for you.
Yeah.
For me with this, it still goes back to hunting. The hunt, the experience with people outside still drives this for me way more than competition does.
Yeah.
I feel like at this point, maybe it's just with my career and things. With my job, it's hard for me to have the time to be able to carve competitively. I can carve, but not. I can't. I don't have the time to be able to sit down and study it enough like I once did and will again, you know.
Sure.
Um,
I like hearing how everybody's motivations for decoy carving just can be so drastically different.
Yep.
Like for me, it kind of started off as dad brought me up in the competition world.
mm-hmm.
So the competition was my greatest driver for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I never did sports in high school. I never did sports in college, but
Mm-hmm.
I always focused on the decoy carving. And now that I've gotten a little
Probably
older.
a smart thing.
Yeah.
It seems like it paid off.
Yeah, it's paid off a little bit better. I wasn't very good at basketball, but now that I've gotten a little older, I've kind of transitioned more into carving for me and carving for hunting and doing actual like hunts over my decoys. Not that I never hunted over my hand carved stuff, but it was always more important for me to keep them nice and hated getting them muddy.
Ours. Oh man, you talk about some beaters out there. You know, I've got birds that still were from that 1996, 97, 98. I got some black cork birds painted in acrylics.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people hate black cork, and I know people hate acrylics. But I got birds that are still going. Yeah, from 19, I mean, how
That's
long is
awesome.
that? How long is that? 20, 30 years?
What year was it?
96, 97, 98. This is when I was doing black cork.
Yeah.
So what is that? That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
And they're still in the rig and still lasting, and and they've been shot, they've been stepped on, they've been run over, boat prop through them.
Yep.
And still grinding.
What does it take to get one of your decoys retired from your rig?
It's got to be like run over enough to where you're like cutting, like if it's a wood bird, if you just run over or shot it enough. Like I've got one out there, a gadwall, I think it's got 40 something pellets in it. There's only so many times you can shoot one, I don't know. I mean, I've had a few that have broken more because they get run over by the boat when you're picking up birds. But epoxy is a good thing.
Yeah.
To put it back together.
We hunt over mostly cork stuff. I find that they could absorb the shot pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
You can shoot them pretty good.
Yeah. They'll. I feel like my cork, if you shoot it too much, they'll soak in that water eventually.
Oh, sure.
But your wood will too. Everything will.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that much gets retired from my rig, especially now that my boys are, there was a time where probably I pulled some stuff out because it was me hunting. The boys weren't old enough to really do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And now with my sons hunting on their own, well, my youngest one, he'll pull out anything, It doesn't matter what it looks like. Eyes are crossed and whatever else. He's pulling everything back in. So stuff that I haven't seen in years is kind of neat to see that it's back in the rig. It's like, that's cool.
Nice. Now talking about your kids, you got both your sons in the carving.
Yeah. They, when they can, they do. Yep. Grayson has carved quite a few and done very well in competition, but probably more importantly, they've done well in the water, with hunting. And then Jonathan's doing the same. John's actually got a bird going now. Grayson is living the college life of work and school and how busy that can be and not much freedom of time.
Yep.
So John still being in high school, he's got one going now. And he actually told me when he goes off to college, he's taking half. I said, this is not a divorce. This is not a bad marriage, So I was like, half of what? And he said, decoys, boats, everything. It's like, you're going to college to study. So they're both, and the cool thing is like, I think one of the neatest things was a while back, the boys, they'll go and Jonathan will take the boat and Grayson will meet him from college and they'll kind of meet halfway at one of the rivers, which is, I can't say how thankful I am for that with their relationship. But I've noticed that they'll pull, very specific birds of our rig to take with them. They're, we've had people give them old plastic stuff from old duck hunter, buddy of mine that retired and he's unable to hunt now.
Mm-hmm.
Gave it to Jonathan just so he can hunt on his own, but it's cool that they still go and dig out my stuff. You know?
Yeah, it's like generations of sentimental value.
Yeah, yeah. You know, one of my favorite hunting stories with the boys with a decoy was I made a gadwall one year and had a lot of time and effort into it, and my wife really liked it, so we kept it here on the mantle for a while. And she saw me put it in the rig one day because Grace and I were going to hunt, and she's like, "You're not going to hunt with that, are you?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's what we made it for." She's like, "Don't mess it up." First pair of gadwall come in, Grayson put like 18 pellets in it.
Did he get the gadwall?
He killed the gadwall too.
Good.
Yeah, that sucker was in there. We were doing a layout hunt, and it sat in there at about 5 yards, probably about 7 yards, and yeah, he got both. And then we had to come home and explain to her that she was right and we were wrong. You know, thankfully she's very understanding.
Yes.
So that's a blessing, especially with all this. You know, I mean, because she's been very supportive. She's lied to me a lot in those days where they looked like cinder blocks with spray paint on them. And she's like, "Oh, they're beautiful." I was selling them for $25 a piece. And everybody was like, I thought I was taking people's money. And then I looked back and I thought, one, I was probably losing money. And two, there was a lot of people lying to me in my life about
how nice they were.
Seeing how good those ducks look, and they were horrible. But we're still hunting with them, you know?
Oh, yeah.
That's the cool thing.
They're functional.
Ducks don't care, you know?
No, they're functional.
Yeah. Ducks don't care.
And that's what I have always found to be the really, really, really cool thing about decoy carving is depending on what your reason is for carving, the threshold of like what is good and what is correct just changes, and it's completely different.
And I think people can get really like bogged down with that. Especially when you start talking to them about, like, you know, I've started asking people now and they ask what I think or, you know, critique it. And I'm like, what's your purpose behind it? What's your motive? Is it for competition? Is it for hunting? Mm-hmm. Is it for a customer? What's it for?
Yeah.
You know, because I think you've got different motives for all categories of what it's going to be like or what it should be like or what your end result of that's going to come out. And people are kind of confused when you ask, but I agree with you. You know, what's the motive behind what you do?
If you're carving like exclusively for utility and for hunting, like you said, you could paint a cinder block black and wear them out.
Yeah, yeah. I can't tell you how many times we killed ducks over milk jugs that we paint. You know, we'd spray paint them black on both ends and white in the middle, tie a line to them. You know, it's like Diver City.
No, like me and Dad, the decoy carvers that we are. You know, you would think that like the rigs that we hunt over are like these immaculate creations, but they're not.
Yeah.
You know, they're just huge black decoys, super simple.
I remember the first time I hunted with your dad, you know, expecting, you know, world class, you know, competition grade decoys.
Yeah.
And he started talking about these big black decoys he used house paint on. And we went out there to the break walls and it was like, what is this? This works. And it did.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I think too, you know, with all this, it becomes birds in your part of the world and birds in my part of the world it's like people, you know, we all got a little variation in our tones, right? You know, and then with seasonally, and I think that's where people get hung up too with their carving and painting, and people get opinionated and then tempers flare, and I don't know, you know. So I think carvers got to be careful not to let it take the joy out of. I think we have to remind ourselves of what our purpose. Why are we doing this? You know, what's your motive? Why did you start? You know,
yeah.
And when that changes, it can become unhealthy. And just go, you know. And we got to recognize that hey, birds do. Hormones change in birds, and therefore changes their feather colors and throughout seasons, you know, and
especially if you're looking for like what is correct.
Yeah.
Right? Because you look at 100 Drake mallards and they're all different.
Goodness. You know, we've accidentally shot hen canvasbacks that we thought were drakes because they were so big and so light colored, and with the sun, and then you think you know accidentally shot a hen and it becomes a juvie drake, you know.
Yep.
So it's kind of fascinating there with the color changes that they can have themselves.
So what I find cool about your kids and being into carving, I find it very unique because they're very utilitarian about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like John is, as a young person in 2024, he is specifically carving decoys to kill birds over.
Yep.
And I just find that so cool.
Okay, so he's both boys have won at the Worlds, right, for the juniors, and at Chesapeake Challenge. John was mad at me when his bird won at the Worlds because I didn't tell him I was going to send it because he realized he was not going to have that decoy to hunt over that year.
Because it goes to the museum for the year.
Yes, and I was like, you've got a decoy in the most prestigious decoy, in my mind, one of the most prestigious museums there could be. Most respected for a year. And he was like, I want to hunt over it. And then he would get mad at me and he always asked, is this for a purchase order or is this going to be on display? Because he'll be upset if I send one of his birds if it's going to be on display. And I'm like,
yeah, he wins a best of show at the World Championships and then he's mad because he can't hunt it. That's great.
So I don't know if I've taught him right or wrong,
Sounds like you did okay.
Yeah, so I'm thankful that the boys love to hunt and this time we have together and fishing and being outside. It's what's one thing that's fun. Probably not a lot of people in the country doing this. Is we have taken decoys and a lot of people will jug fish, right? Tying a line to a pool noodle or something, fishing a line, putting bait out, and catching fish on it. And so what I did when the boys were younger was we put our lines on duck decoys during the summer, throw them out in the creek. The boys always felt like they were fish would get on it. You felt like you were chasing a duck. Multifunctional tooling, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one and only time I tried to make a antique decoy or fake antique, a bufflehead?
The bufflehead. Yeah.
And we took it back here in the creek and shot it.
Yeah. Well, I remember you shot it and then didn't you bury it in the yard for?
Oh, I think we lit it on fire or something too. I'm making a mess right here. I'm gonna fix that.
This is the worst stage of a decoy.
Yeah.
It's like the base coating is like so important, but like right now it's like so ugly and you can't see it and it just makes you mad.
And being able to see that there's a problem under the, what you're trying to get to. My dream bird and hunt was a eider. Common. Yeah, I know people want kings, but I don't know, there's something about a common that I just like, So, I carved some commons. We took the boys out to Boston this year. Grayson had a surf scoter that he had carved. Did John take a decoy? I don't remember if John took a decoy or not. And then I took my eiders. So that was cool for us to be able to, like, for an Alabama guy to make eiders, take them up there. And I know that the guy we were hunting with, he had decoys out, and that was part of it. But I've got really cool pictures of eiders swimming with my eider. So, that's a cool thing.
That's what it's all about.
Oh my gosh, it was awesome,
amazing.
And just to sit there, and I told the boys when we're, in the layout boats, I said, did you ever think we'd be laying in a layout boat in the Atlantic Ocean, watching decoys or watching eiders swim in our decoys and saying, we don't have to shoot these, Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. In the afternoons, we would go meet with another carver, and hang out with him and get to see what he was doing with their Hank Garvey. So, and met Hank years ago at the Ohio show, and he lived in Massachusetts, so I don't know. I just think it's neat how carvers are open to visiting and just communicating and sharing their love. There's a brotherhood that I feel like exists.
Yeah, that's huge. Because I don't know if it's, I feel like every generation is told that they've missed like the golden age of whatever they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But dad says that I've missed the golden age of competitions and things. And I don't know if people back then were as open to share their secrets and things as they are now. But it seems like people are super open, wanting to help and get people in the carving. And
yeah.
Would you find that to be correct?
Yeah, and I think you got to have that, because if we're not going to be open and willing to share, then we're going to have a dying art,
Yeah.
And whereas I feel like when you come at it from a tradition standpoint, then there is, it falls into the folk art category in the artistic world. But then here again, we also consider ourselves to be contemporary artists,
Mm-hmm.
So I think in order for us to keep it that way, then we've got to have that open door. Be willing to talk to new folks that are interested.
Yeah.
My goal has always been to. I'm thankful for like the State Arts Council. I've partnered with them for a number of years, and they've like encouraged. They promote it in a way that allows me to teach carving to local guys or girls,
mm-hmm.
That normally would not have ever come in and tried to carve or anything,
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are interested, I think, but it's expensive to get started, or, if you don't have tools, it's just like me with my uncle. I started because he had tools. If he had not allowed me to come in his shop with his tools, then shoot, you and I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Yep. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard for people just to get going. Because it seems like the people that get into decoy carving, which I find like me and your kids as an example, starting young and keeping it going, seems like is the exception.
Yeah.
It seems like the new people who are getting into it are like the newly retired guys or people that have, you kind of need money and time.
Yeah.
To kind of get going.
Yeah. And to keep it going, at that. I've heard people say that what we really need the group that we need to target is the 30 and 40-year-olds.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think kind of it needs to be where everybody's fair game. Because I think if you target, to me, I don't know about you, like when I've taught classes, I feel like kids are, they're interested and they're way more willing to listen and work with you sometimes than adults. Adults sometimes can be stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
So I think even if the kids don't continue to carve, I don't think they're going to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they just talk about their experience, that's kind of carrying on this tradition, that we love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it always, for me, it always seemed like younger people are hard because I haven't met very many that young people who carved for the sake of carving.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the hunting is involved at some point, especially with like the working decoys.
Yeah.
So it's like not only do you have to have a kid that has interest in carving, but they also need to have like that hunting background.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my experience. So it makes it tough. And like with the middle-aged guys or the people, odds are they're already hunting or have the capability to go out and get the stuff that they need to hunt or to carve. And do you have a contest ribbon or win or memory that kind of stands out to you as your best, favorite, most meaningful?
Winning the single division at the Worlds, the general all gunners single hunting decoy in 2022. That was like I finally slipped one in. There's an old saying in the South that even a blind squirrel can pick up a nut every now and then.
Yep.
I was that blind squirrel on that one. I'll take it. I was thankful. Winning Havre de Grace, that was my first win. Even just getting to place. I think just getting a ribbon from there.
Yeah.
You know, that probably fueled a little bit of that competition stuff. Louisiana winning it. That's a hard one to win. I feel like that was a big deal. I won Washington State Ducks Unlimited's Carver of the Year twice.
Okay.
That was big. I won it with a gadwall once and won it with a canvas bag.
Nice.
And I was out there teaching a class when I got the news that I'd won. So I was like, how cool is that?
That's great.
But I wasn't at the show. A friend of mine who carved a Brant with me, he went out to Washington and won the Brant Festival with the decoy he carved here, you know? And I'm like, to me, that was just as special, you know? I'm like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And he loved to Brant hunt. He would fly out, he'd go to Mexico and go wherever. And that was like his bird that he loves. So he did it for that show, but he did it for himself, and then he won. I couldn't believe he won.
That's
It was a beautiful bird, though. So to me, that was a huge. That you know, I mean, stuff like that, and the boys winning.
Yeah.
Those are ribbons or plaques that are probably even more meaningful. I can think of 3 or 4 for me. But I think about the boys. You know, us winning Louisiana this year. You know, I won professional, Grayson won amateur, and John won novice. I was like,
that's so cool.
I was like, I don't know that will ever happen again.
Yeah, it's so
you know.
Cool.
So yeah, that was probably one of the coolest. Where I thought, you know, what a proud dad moment. You know.
Yeah.
And to me, that shows a really hard one to. It's a hard one to win. You know, here's a thought for you, and for really anybody. And I really encourage this. Bill Kell encouraged me the first time I went to a decoy show at Haverty Grace. He said, I want you to, he took his waders. He said, put these on. I was like, what are you doing? And because they judge them on the bait. And he had me go out there and handle the birds. And he wasn't judging. He had no part of that. But they needed bird handlers. And he encouraged me to do that. And then coming up to the Ohio show, you know, your dad had me handle birds for the IWCA stuff. And the reason was both those guys knew if you're around the tank and you're around the judges, you hear what they're saying and you hear what they're looking for.
Yes.
And you know,
yep.
And that's a different kind of critique and knowledge that's non-biased that you don't, you know, there can be biasness there now.
Absolutely.
But whether it is or not, you're hearing the judges' thoughts, opinions, whatever, of every decoy out there. And I feel like that has taught me a ton. And I still, you know, even like when I go to Louisiana, I always help with like clerking or bird handling or whatever. And like when I take the boys with me, I get them to do it.
Yep.
You know? And if I take a friend with me, I get them to do something. Even if you're just drying off birds, running them from table to tank, you know? To me, that's a big deal to be able to hear and be there. And I think that's another factor outside of just direct mentoring that has made a huge difference in what I do.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I've learned a ton by doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, not only do you get to listen to the judges, which can be very helpful, but also like the most infuriating thing in the entire world.
It can be painful.
But like being able to handle everybody else's birds and seeing you know what wins and what does better and what other people are doing, and if that's what drives you, there's no better way to learn.
Yeah, you either get really tough, and unfortunately, you know, most people leave a decoy show and they're not happy. You know, and when I say that, I mean because somebody's gonna say I should have won, or they shouldn't have won, or they, you know, this or that.
Yeah.
So
there's only one person happy at a show if you're lucky.
Yeah, and you just have to go in that mindset and go, well, you know, everybody's not gonna win.
Yep.
I mean, I've taken second to you many times. I've
Oh,
taken
yeah.
second to your dad. I've taken second to Mattis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mattis beat me out of a shotgun one year at Ohio, and here again, you know, he's good at what he does. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so and you know, I've slipped one in there on your dad before. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
a couple of times. So it's just part of it. But being there, I think, and being open and willing to be critiqued and willing to be. I've had people say it's the worst decoy they've ever seen in their life, you know, and you just swallow your pride and take your decoy and go home.
Yep.
So just wooden cork, just paint.
That's it.
Ducks don't care.
No, that was the competitions was always the biggest driver for me, and man, nothing humbles you quicker or teaches you faster than just having your butt just absolutely handed to you.
Yeah. It's hard, you know. I've done both because I'm so far away from, you know, my closest decoy competition 6 hours.
Mhm.
I think Ohio shows 10 and a half hours from me. The World's is 15. So I've done a lot of mail-ins, but I've gone to a lot of shows too. You know what I mean? Gone to the Worlds as much as I can. Used to come to Ohio as much as I could. There's a big difference in being there and mailing in, because being there, you get the camaraderie of the people. You get to see what you're competing against, and you get to learn from what everybody else is making, and you see good things that you're like, ooh, how do I do that? You know?
Yeah.
Whereas when you're mailing in, you're really just getting a ribbon.
Yep.
You don't get the experience of knowing, which sometimes you just got to do that. But at the same time, I would go to every show I possibly could, and look forward to, you know, when I retire, doing that again, going to as much as we can. But I would encourage people to really go and get involved, whether they're carving or not, you know, whether they're competing or not, you know, because you realize how many more artists are actually out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that my wife's carving, it's been really cool getting a brand new perspective, you know, on carving competitions and things like that, and traveling to shows with her and making new memories. It's been really special. It's been kind of a fun rebirth in competition for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, we stumbled upon before last went to the Worlds. My wife went with us, and it was really cool because when she goes, we really try to get out and look to see the areas. You know, that's the cool thing, is getting to see the areas of what's going on
and the food.
Oh my gosh! So we drove down to Chicotee, I guess how you say it, and stumbled across a restaurant that was just absolutely jam packed with decoys. You know, and I'm like, how cool is that? And they were all, you know, good old traditional working birds, and met the owner, and that was a cool experience. Old metal building, great food. You know, these are things that you would never be able to do if you didn't go to these shows, and didn't talk to people and say, hey, where should I eat, or where should I, you know, give me a cool place to go. Learn the history. You know, we would just go out and just drive to see the marshes and what other birds are out there, and do a little birding, a little sightseeing, a little lighthouse looking, you know.
Yeah, I know the major thing we've been talking about this whole time is kind of more of the contemporary side of decoys, but like when it comes to like decoy history, it's so rich. Do you have any carvers from the past that you look on with admiration, or that have been inspirations for you? Or,
you know, the reason I started carving was because of reading those articles in the Ducks Unlimited magazines. Some of my favorites, you know, one of the cool thing is you don't realize where life's going to take you, right? Whether it be contemporary or antique wise. You know, contemporary, the first carvers I ever knew of were like your dad, Bombardier, George Williams, Smizer, Bill Kell, Jim Higgins, you know, seeing their stuff in old Wingset catalog. So that's all I knew, right, of names. But then I once got a National Geographic, and it had this article about this guy, Cigar Daisy, and how he was like one of the last remaining true market hunters. And then I was fortunate to be chosen as one of the artists for the Carving Out the Future through the War Museum, where we would teach carvers in our area, and then we would go up to the museum and present them and compete with them and all that. But got to know Cigar a little bit, ran into him at that show, and got to the point to where we could sit down and talk and have a conversation. And what a cool experience here's a guy in National Geographic, and who's willing to sit down with you and talk. And cool story. He would talk about the market hunting days, and talk about things like hunting dove out of his basement windows, and lining up the feed out through there and shooting 8 at a time. So those guys inspire me. I, through the War Museum, just kind of fell in love with the Ward brothers, and what they do and did. And you got 2 old barbers who are riding bicycles, who are carving in their barber shop. I'm like, how cool is that? And then making thousands of decoys a year in the 30s. I can't make 50 now.
Right.
And with the tools that they had, and one of them had, some physical limitations. So, so that's caused me to try to start collecting a little bit. Not very much, but really just to kind of keep it alive for the boys and my own interest. I bought some stuff I bought a bird up at Ohio one time. I bought old canvasback, and that seems to be what I always end up with is canvasbacks. That's what we hunt here primarily.
Canvasbacks are special to you.
Canvasbacks are special to me. So thinking about it and realizing this, the only 3 antique decoys I own are all canvasbacks.
Yeah.
So, and here again, that may be driven by the hunt,
The hunt drives you to carve.
Right.
So,
which drives your interest, and then what you meet, who you meet, and what inspires you. Got a dream hunt? I think I just had mine. My dream hunt was the eiders with the boys. Which a dream hunt?
So I've been finding myself over the past few years. So I've been lucky. I've done a lot of hunting. I've done a lot of traveling. The decoy carving world has kind of led to a lot of that. I've been finding myself doing more like carving based challenges. So if it's like if I will do a trip, I'd want to carve something to go and harvest that bird over.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of to the point where it's not necessarily about piling them up and shooting a whole bunch of birds, but it's just like the experience of the people and me accomplishing something. So like 2 years ago, I went to my boss at work, and which has slowly led to me being pretty much a full-time carver. But I was like, hey, would it be okay with you if I took like 2 or 3 weeks off in January and just kind of went off and did some hunting and stuff? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. It's a slow season. You can go off and do it. So it's like I started planning a couple trips with a few people that I knew down the East Coast. And it started off with like a brant hunt in Long Island. And I carved some brant for it. And then the trip got a little bigger, and I asked for a little bit more time off. I ended up taking off the entire month of January and, got a swan tag and, all that stuff. And ended up I was like, well, I'm doing this. Might as well go down to Florida.
Oh, gosh.
So it's like next thing I knew, I had 28 days of like travel and hunting planned, just like hopscotching different people going and I carved a rig of brant. I carved 3 brant and eider because I had an eider hunt planned, which I still haven't got my eider because of the weather.
It's an awesome bird.
Oh man, one day. The weather got me on that one, but carved some scoters, and I shot surf scoters over my decoys off the long line, and I have a layout boat in Delaware, and shot some black ducks over my hand carved decoys in New Jersey and Virginia, and carved a swan, shot my swan, tundra swan over it in a field in North Carolina.
and
then
beat me at the Worlds with it this year.
Yeah.
We were first and second in the
Yep.
geese and confidence.
Yep.
My little coot and your giant swan.
Field proven and contest proven.
Yeah, I'll give you a guess which one disappeared against that one.
And then I ended up down in Florida, and I had a fulvous whistling tree duck and a black-bellied whistling tree duck and mala duck that I carved and shot all those over my decoys.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when Teresa came and met down me, and then I ended up proposing to her after the whole trip was over.
That's awesome.
Kind of as like a consolation prize.
Which is a, you know, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, just how cool that was, is how you went to the Ding Darling Refuge
Mm-hmm.
and proposed to her near that, not there necessarily,
Pretty
but
close.
that island is where Joy and I, my wife, where we honeymooned.
Mhm.
You know, so funny how, you know, and here again, Ding Darling being the first national refuge, if I stand correct, I'm pretty sure, which he made the very first duck stamp, you know.
Mhm.
So cool how that, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It all goes together somehow.
And Ding Darling has like a pretty rich decoy history too, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. You got Jim Sprinkle that lives down there
Mhm.
in Sanibel. You know, they had that huge hurricane that hit and really destroyed a lot. But Sprinkle, who wrote a lot of books years ago, and I've been very fortunate to spend a little bit of time with him when we go on vacation down there. And wife and I get to go. You know, we've met him 26 years ago.
Mhm.
You know, and got some really cool pictures of him and the boys. You know,
Yeah.
he'll, you know,
I have
stand there and talk with them, and it's so cool.
I have a few of his books.
Yeah, yeah. There was, no, it's gone now. There was actually one of his, oh my gosh, I can't think of the bird. Avocet. It was an Avocet model, a cast that he had done. It was actually laying in here earlier.
Oh, nice.
He had given me the last time we were down there. So yeah, so the snowbirders, you know, I guess they end up moving down there, and
Yeah.
so you get a few of them that carve. Get a little history there. And weirdly, Florida can be a good duck hunting state. We were in college, and we were on a quarter system, and the 30 days fell exactly during our entire break. We had every day of the season off. You avoided girlfriends in those days, and we were not married, and it oh my gosh, you would run from daylight to dark, and then you could do midnight bowling here for really cheap.
Oh man.
So man, you'd go midnight bowling and get up and go again. You talk about being tired. But 2 weeks of that, somebody was gonna be asleep in the boat. I remember a good friend of mine that I hunted with, and we had lived that life for a few weeks of daylight to dark, driving all over the state, midnight bowling. I probably hadn't bowled since. And he fell asleep one day, and he was vibrating the riverbank. He was snoring so loud. And for some reason, there were a bunch of dead turtle shells. I guess, I don't know if something killed them or if they had just gone. That's where all turtles go to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like a shrine built on top of him. And he woke up with just a mound of turtle shells on him. Stupid stuff you do, as a kid. Funny though.
It was probably very funny.
Oh, still those memories of, that same guy woke up because we were on that schedule, and I was back at college. He said he woke up, was late, got to my house to hunt, and I wasn't there, and he was mad at me, and then he realized duck season had been closed a week.
There, back when I was a kid, and Uncle Dave. Do you remember Uncle Dave?
Yeah, I do. I do.
So back when he hunted and carved, he was just getting started, and he was going to go out and hunt at the marsh with us. And I don't remember, for whatever reason, I had a bad grade or whatever, and Dad punished me. And looking back on it now, I'm sure it hurt him.
Oh yes, yeah.
More than it hurt me.
Man, I hate that when that happens.
But he didn't let me go hunting that weekend.
Yep.
And supposedly Dad said that Uncle Dave showed up to his first duck hunt, not realizing that I wasn't going to be there, and showed up with a whole list of duck-related jokes that he printed off the internet,
Yeah,
and he was going to go through them as we hunted, but so I missed out on that.
that's great. You know, I started out. I think about my uncle who had a huge influence on my life, and especially, you know, I mean, not with just giving me tools to, or allowing me to come to his house and barge in and break his tools and whatever. But, you know, with going back and you were talking about, you said Uncle Dave was a whittler. Is that right? Who was a whittler?
My grandfather was.
Grandfather was. So my uncle was, right? And I didn't, my experience with a knife was not good. You know, I mean, I just stitches and all kind of stuff. But I did when the boys were young, because it was funny, my first power tool was borrow my uncle's big Sears and Roebuck grinder with some kind of stump grinding for probably metal or something on there. But then when the boys, you know, when we were pregnant with Grayson, I was like, I'm not going to be able to be out in the garage carving all the time. So I taught myself to carve with a knife. And that was one of the things that Bill Kell, when I had gone up there to Havre de Grace, I realized he was knife carving, and he kind of showed me how to use that. So it's kind of cool how now, if I'm carving a Tupelo head and a balsa body, well, 98% of that bird is going to be carved with a knife. And so I think tooling, you know, and maybe we can have a conversation about that, how tooling, you know, really influences. Because I know a lot of guys use hatchets. Man, that'd be bad for me. I can't imagine what what it would look like.
Would you be willing to share the story of when you single-handedly shut down the head whittling contest at the Ohio show?
As long as George Williams doesn't hear this, because every time I see that man, which is not often, but when I do, he reminds me. Yep. So I think the year before that, I was in Ohio, and I'd won the head whittling competition. And I got up there.
Can you explain what a head whittling contest is?
Yeah, head whittling competition is you go to a show and you get 2 to 3 hours. You basically draw heads out of a bag, a cutout head out of a bag that somebody's cut out for you on their bandsaw. And then from there, you get a 2 to 3 hour window, depending on what show it is, to carve that head from start to finish. You go to, you know, we'd go to Maryland to the Ward place, and it would be cedar. You go down to Louisiana, it's always gonna be Tupelo, you know. And I feel like at Ohio, a lot of times it was Tupelo. So, you know, I put a little pressure on myself. I won it last year, you know. I got to fight through this. And I'm sitting there with like Jim Brace and other guys who are really good. I bought a knife from John Dunkel, who I think is an incredible knife maker. I bought a knife from him and entered the head whittling competition, making canvas backs, ironically. We were all into it. I was sitting beside Jim Brace. We were talking, having a good old time. And Andy Hildreth and my son Grayson walk up. How's it going? And as soon as they said that, I slipped and I thought I cut the end of my finger off. And it just ripped the band, you know, just ripped the nail a little bit. And so I told Jim Brace, I said, I'm going to go fix this in the bathroom real quick. Go wash out and I'll be right back. When I stood up, I noticed my knife was sticking out of my pants leg. I thought, well, that's weird. And when I pulled it out, it felt like a hot bowl of soup going down my leg.
Oh.
And I thought, ooh, this is bad. So Andy and Grayson went to the bathroom with me. And I dropped my drawers. And there was so much blood coming out. We took that, like we were using all the paper towels. They would fill up as fast as you could put them on you. And randomly, I think he was a carver. I don't know if whoever this was.
He wasn't.
Okay.
He was just at the hotel.
He was like an EMT or something.
Well, upstairs they save a bunch of rooms for like airport employees and things like that.
Okay.
And he was there for that.
Random guy, right? Who is a medic or something. Comes down there and he's like, jumps in there and starts putting pressure on my leg. And he looks at me and says, you got to go to the hospital. And I get to the hospital Andy drives me over there in his rental car. My wife calls, and Grayson, who is barely a teenager, he says, "We're taking your dad to the hospital. He cut his leg." And my wife says, "No, you're not. How's the show going?" He goes, "No, seriously, Dad's hurt himself." And she's like, "No, y'all having a good time?" He goes, "Woman, your husband is cut." And then she still didn't believe us. And he was like, "I'm letting you go, Mom." We get to the hospital. I drop my drawers. I'm on the hospital bed, and blood is squirting up like a school water fountain. Every heartbeat. Whoosh, whoosh, like a foot in the air. And Grayson goes, "Cool." And I was like, "No, it's not cool." And the doctor's like, "No, it's not cool." And he gets on top of me. The doctor, I thought, was going to put his hand through my leg with the amount of pressure he was putting on me. Ends up cauterizing it 3 times, puts in bed sutures. And the joke was, when I got back to the show, it had been renamed the Jason Russell Memorial Head Whittling Competition. Everybody already had me dead. And then, so from that, I unfortunately earned the title of the person that single-leggedly shut down the head whittling competition at Ohio. So maybe this will bring it back. Maybe somebody will have mercy on us and
maybe
and bring it back. It was one-time fluke. I'll bring Band-Aids next time, right?
Yeah.
I'll bring in a gurney and a, I don't know, whatever else we can bring.
Yeah, that's horrible.
To have it back.
Glad you're okay.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show how dangerous it could potentially be.
A sharp knife will cut you. You won't feel it,
Yeah, did you feel it?
Nope. Never felt it go on my leg.
Yep.
Felt it on my fingernail because the fingernail caused it to rip. But never felt it in my leg, which is a sign of a good blade and good sharp knife. And I still use that knife.
Yeah.
And then I've started making knives, just for myself. So that's kind of cool. So I use my knife that I made and the Dunkel knife primarily.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. So I've always considered myself to be kind of a, as far as decoys go, a tool maker. So I feel like making my own knife, to make my own tools to hunt with, is kind of fitting. Why are you so far ahead of me? Good night.
I'm going pretty simple. I mean,
I am too. But
I'm pretty good.
I'm pretty good. I guess I'm just slow.
Yeah, going off of your tool making, like I remember one of the summers that I came down to visit you. We did something similar to this. We carved a couple decoys together. We carved a couple coots together, and then we made duck calls together.
Yep.
And I just found that so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like the special thing about duck hunting is there's just so much you could just really get into the weeds of like how much effort you want to put into it. You could literally just go to the store and buy 12 decoys and a gun, and then you're good. Or you can train your dog. You can make your call. You can carve your decoys. Like you can build your own wetlands. You can manage things.
And to me, I want it to be about more than just killing. I want it to be more than, I want the hunt to be. We've done it all. I mean, I've built P-rows. I've finished layout boats. I've rebuilt a 1952 Barnegat Bay sneak box. So I don't know. To me, that stuff, and I guess I've got a weak spot for the traditional. But yeah, I mean, it's there's so much work that can be done, and anything, whether it be managing your marsh or like you're saying, I mean, to have a good dog, it takes work, or to do this, it takes time and commitment. And it's hard to get that these days, I feel like too.
Yeah, I say like my duck season never ends.
Yep.
It's like my year has just always been just a duck related cycle that just never stops.
Yep.
It's like you're carving from January through April, that's when a lot of the contests happen, and that's kind of what I always did, and then managed our marsh from May through September, and then just hunted from September through January, and it was just always some sort of duck related cycle.
Yeah, I mean, if for us, our duck season doesn't end until January 31st. We're managing wood duck boxes, and that's we'll have eggs in anywhere from from February 1 to February 14. And then from there, I mean, we do some volunteer work with the state, across the state or wherever we can. I mean, Jonathan's been volunteering to help with one of the management areas for some whatever grunt work they'll let him do, really, because he's kind of interested in doing this as a career.
Yeah.
Being waterfowl biology.
Yeah, he's banding wood ducks and stuff, isn't he?
He is banding wood ducks in North Alabama, and so that's been cool that getting to know biologists in the state, and then here again that just helps my kids because it helps them to learn to love waterfowling. Because I think nothing wrong with just going hunting, right? Nothing at all. But I think sometimes it just adds more to your experience when you get involved in actually trying to preserve. I mean, we all take if we're hunting, but trying to give back and trying to understand why we do what we do and how it all works. And I feel like the boys have a drop of knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes, but here again, they also realize that they really don't, as far as what maybe Ducks Unlimited is doing, or what Delta Waterfowl is doing, or what these biologists are doing, how hard a work that is. Because I mean, duck farming is dirty, sweaty, grimy work that nobody sees, but everybody wants to show up and shoot your ducks.
Yep.
So these, my hat's off to the biologists of the state and Game and Fish for all that they do to try to, all the hard work that goes into it. That's probably a thankless job, and people fuss at them, and but it's like, man, they're doing it for the ducks, not necessarily for the hunters, but when you do it for the ducks, then the hunting gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd have to imagine it's a very thankless job, because I can talk from experience on our property.
Yeah.
If you could have the best moist soil management, and you could have the best plot of flooded corn you've ever had, and you could have ice eaters going in your flooded corn when everything else is froze, and you can have everything, your blinds perfect, and your decoys are perfect, and everything's perfect, and then if the ducks aren't there, then there's literally nothing you could do about it.
Yep. And I think some of those guys get a hard time for that and get blamed or whatever. And I go, man, you get guys that are, those biologists for our state are busting their tail.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe any of them hear this, we thank you.
There you go.
So.
And kind of like you said earlier, you're the work you're doing, you're trying to make your hunting more than just about the kill, and get more than just the kill out of it. And I almost feel like if you're hunting for solely the kill, and this is, it's a lesson that's learned very hard. It's something that I've always, have struggled with, because you always want to shoot that limit.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody wants to shoot that limit.
Yeah.
But if you're solely out there just to kill, I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yep. Yep.
And
major disappointment, it becomes a competition in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you're carving your own decoys, and maybe making your own calls or training your own dog, and like you talked about that first bufflehead you killed over those, I'm sure not so beautiful bufflehead decoys that you made.
That's rough. One of my favorite carving / teaching experiences was I met my friend Dax lives down around Tuscaloosa area. He had called me and wanted to carve, so we set up a time, and then there was a reporter from the Huntsville area who was interested in doing an article on us, or on my carving, whatever. So I invited him to just come carve a decoy with us, and then that will help you write your article. So we did black ducks. This was the day before Thanksgiving. Season opened the day after Thanksgiving. So Dax carved his first decoy, and so did the reporter, and I carved we all three carved black ducks. And the coolest thing was opening day, which is 2 days after we carved that, I'm floating that decoy, and the two black ducks set right with it. Ooh. I'm like, that's when it's like the stuff, when you go, this is why we do it.
Yep.
I don't know if either of those guys ever seen a black duck.
Yeah.
But it worked one day.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Is the one you never shot. It's in that cool spring air. I just take a breath, let it all out nice and slow. I know this path in life, it is only mine, and I will chase the sun wherever it may go.
There we go, all done. So worked on these for 3 days and did some fishing in the meantime, and so that's why. Jason, thank you
Yeah.
for the hospitality and the good times this week and sharing your shop with me and talking about old memories. And it was a good time.
Glad you guys came down. Look forward to coming up to Ohio and carving and hunting, continuing our friendship, relationship. 'Cause it's more than just carving for us, you know. I mean, because it's been a long journey together and with your family. So thankful for you and Teresa coming down. It's been great.
Yeah.
Look forward to next time.
I appreciate you.
You know?
Well, thank you for watching and sitting down with us. Make sure you're following Jason on Instagram. He makes some really nice stuff. Also follow me on Instagram. I post how-tos and my work and things like that on Instagram and Facebook. And my friend Philip Madewell made the music. You can find him on SoundCloud and Instagram.